It's time to start talking Missouri and Boston College, and we are joined today by Locked On Missouri. Check that all out on today's Locked On Boston College.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball each and every weekday. And on today's show, very happy to join. And on today's program, I'm really excited to welcome on AJ Black, one of my colleagues from Locked On Boston College, of course, Missouri's opponent this Saturday at 11 a.m., of course, noon Eastern time if you're traveling to Boston like myself. AJ, thanks for coming on the program.
Hey, thanks for having me on, John. I'm looking forward to talking some BC and Mizzou action. It's a matchup that I don't think many people were expecting much from, but I think it should be an interesting game on Saturday.
I think it should really be an interesting football game, too. Of course, unfortunately, Boston College going to be out without its usual starting quarterback, Phil Jerkovich. Now Dennis Grosel in at quarterback, the former walk-on, but he will actually be making his 10th start in his career this Saturday. What should Missouri fans expect from Dennis Grosel at quarterback?
So Grosel, you may look like a lot of people, when you look at Grosel, you look at the stats, and I think it's important to realize he's a tale of two different quarterbacks. In 2019, he was with Steve Addazio, former UF offensive coordinator, a guy that was really big into ground and pound football, didn't get a lot through the air, didn't do a very good job of developing quarterbacks. You just look at Anthony Brown at Oregon, and you can see what quarterbacks do when they leave Steve Addazio. Now, 2020, Addazio's out. They bring in Jeff Hafley. They bring in Frank Signetti Jr., who is a quarterback guru. He's a guy that works really well with quarterbacks. He worked with Djokovic. They had a good relationship, but he also developed Grosel. Grosel started to learn how to throw the ball better. He learned how to run the offense. He could spread him out. He could throw it. He could also run the ball. He now owns the team record for most passing yards in a game. Threw for 520 yards in the season finale last year against UVA. So you're seeing him grow a little bit. Now, to be fair, against Temple this year, his first game as a starter this year kind of looked like 2019 Grosel again. So, I think you're going to have to wait to see what we get out of him against Mizzou, but he's a quarterback that I think, could bring this offense not to where Djokovic could have, but at a nice level to keep them competitive.
Yeah, I actually watched the first half of that BC Temple game, and I noticed the first drive, Boston College had a pretty big punt return, a kickoff return, of course, into Temple territory. Grosel throws a 19-yard touchdown, but he only threw for 30 more yards in the game after that. I mean, how big of that is a concern, or was that more of a function of maybe the opponent getting up fairly early on a fairly weak Temple ball club? Which is it? Maybe a little both?
I think it's actually, Hafley said it, and I said it before the coach even mentioned it, that was just the function of the game. The week before, against UMass, another weak team. BC hasn't really played much this year against, quality opponents. They almost lost Zay Flowers as well, who is their star wide receiver, on a fluky hit on a botched jet sweep. And so I think in the back of Hafley's mind, he was like, we're up 7-0. Let's just run the ball down their throat and get the heck out of this game and start our real part of their season without losing anyone. So I think he was, and he said it today. He said, we're content doing power run and getting out of that game with the win, because he says a win's a win. So I think that's kind of what they were doing. I really wouldn't look too much into Grosel's stats against Temple.
Now, if you're a fan of Locked On Boston College and Locked On Missouri, check out Locked On ACC. It's hosted by the great Candace Cooper, who is joined by a variety of ACC guest hosts, including myself. And we talk everything Locked On ACC related. You need to check this out wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're at it, Also, check out BetOnline.ag. We're back and better than ever. All eyes are on the gridiron as teams are back and on to start another football season. And as always, BetOnline is your number one sport for all your pro and college football action this season. With the new updated site and interface, even more odds, props, and contests, BetOnline.ag continues to be the number one source for everything football. Head over to the site today, and you get their 100% welcome bonus. That's double your initial deposit just for signing up. And don't forget to use promo code NFL100. From football, basketball, boxing, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of their amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that the Eagles got conservative, I think, especially after they got up 14-0. It became pretty clear that the Temple was just overmatched. And you did mention that Zay Flowers got a little banged up in that ball game. To my eyes, he's got to be by far the Eagles' most explosive playmaker. Number 4, if you're looking for him out there on the field, Mizzou fans. But is he going to be okay this week, do you think?
Yeah, no, he got banged up against UMass 2 weeks ago.
Excuse me.
Yes, and then, I mean, when he got hit in that game against UMass, I thought it was his knee. I thought he was done for the year. The way he went down and they had to help him off, I thought ACL, he's gone. He came back. He had a 50-yard run at the end of the Temple game, I believe. That was a big moment for the Eagles, and that was about it. But he's good, and in terms of what he can do, he's growing as a wide receiver. He's very, very quick. He can, he's explosive in his moves, the way that he can kind of get extra yardage after a catch. You don't see that much with Boston College. He's a one-of-a-kind kind of wide receiver. He's a first grade. He's getting first-round grades around the country in terms of mock drafts and things like that. So he's someone you might want to keep an eye on. And then behind him, there's some excellent wide receivers too that really didn't see much in Temple. They only had I think 3 or 4 receptions. So there's guys like Trey Barry, who was a FCS All-American last year at Jacksonville State at tight end. Really dynamic pass catcher. Had 6 catches for 100 yards against UMass the week before. Really someone you want to watch for. And then there is Jalen Gill, who is a 5-star wide receiver from Ohio State, who's been out the first 3 games. And Jeff Hafley said today that he's hopeful that he'll return. I'm not sure if he will. He had a foot injury, but he's been running at practice. So he's someone to watch for, because if he gets out there, then Boston College has him to kind of bracket with Zay Flowers, and that kind of opens some things up for the Eagles offense.
So for all you Boston College Eagles fans out there, this is something Missouri fans are painfully aware of so far, but the Missouri run defense has left just a ton to be desired, especially the first 2 weeks. Hard to know what to make of last week against Southeast Missouri, one way or the other. But against Kentucky, AJ, I'll just let you know, the Wildcats ran for over 300 yards in that football game. Do you expect a lot more running from Boston College's single back, under center pro type offense?
I don't know what they're going to do. I can't get a feel for their offense. BC has some of the most prolific wide receivers in the school history right now. And with Djokovic under center, they would have just spread him out and thrown the ball around. But with Grosel last week, we saw them just go kind of conservative with the power run. Now, given that Missouri struggles against the run, will they do it again? They could. I haven't seen a good front line play yet from the offensive line in terms of run blocking, which concerns me because I know Mizzou at times has really good defensive linemen. They could. I have a feeling that they're going to do some things that they haven't seen yet, because BC, as I said earlier, they played Colgate, Temple, and UMass. 3 really, there's an FCS school and 2 teams that are kind of near the bottom and everything else. Sure. They've kind of kept everything vanilla at this point. I expect they were kind of trying to keep all of that off film so that they could, again, when they open against Mizzou and then next week it's Clemson, they can start to, pull out their call card and have more of these plays that maybe aren't on film that can kind of catch defenses off guard. So I think they might open things up a little bit more than we've seen so far out of BC.
Yeah, and to your point about that Missouri defensive line, obviously I mentioned already that the run game has struggled. I think, frankly, they're still searching for a second pass rusher too, to go along with Trajan Jeffcoat, a guy who was, I believe second team preseason all conference by most accounts. And to be honest, he hasn't totally stood out so far in the first 3 games either. I don't want to, small sample size, not panicking by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that Missouri defensive line has a lot to prove without a doubt. Now, AJ, I know last season, Boston College, if you were paying attention to college football last year, hard not to notice they played really, really well against some tough competition. Played Notre Dame incredibly tough, played Clemson tough for maybe 2-3 quarters of that game. Any chance that, considering Clemson is playing Boston College after Missouri, any chance that the Eagles are going to be looking past Missouri, or is this maybe wishful thinking on a Missouri fan's part?
I think that's wishful thinking. I with Jeff Hafley, I have a lot of faith in this coaching staff to get their guys prepared. He preaches it over and over again. He said today, I treat every game like it's the same team, and if I don't do that, then I'm not doing my job. Because I don't want to, he doesn't want to have his team underprepared to play a team like Temple, because as he said, there's all these other games that are going on, like Pitt losing to Western Michigan or whatever. You gotta get your guys ready. So he doesn't strike me as a coach that'll let his team look ahead. I think this is a big game for Boston College. It's probably one, even if they hadn't looked ahead those 3 games, I think they did look ahead to Mizzou a little bit. Because this is a big game for them. This is their first real challenge of the season. So I think they're going to be ready for this one. And I think they're going to be excited because they've been on the road for 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's interesting. A big game for Missouri too, no doubt about it. And a game I've been looking forward to ever since I saw it on the schedule. Boston's a fun town. I've only been there once. Just quickly, do you have a tip for a Missouri fan like myself who's making the trek to Boston? Should I just Uber down from my hotel near Boston College, that kind of thing? Any good tailgating spots, bars, any just quick tips like that?
So let me tell all the Mizzou fans out there right now, if you are planning on tailgating at Boston College, you're not because you can't. BC is, so it's Boston College, but BC's on the outer skirts of Boston,
right,
close to the town Newton, and BC has this kind of contentious relationship with the neighbors. And so we don't get a lot of the tailgating amenities that you get anywhere else in the country. Even UMass gets better ones than we do, because the town has made it so that BC fans can only get 4 hours of tailgating a game. And on top of that, they charge you an arm and a leg. You have to make a donation. And for any spot on BC, it's absurd. So for outside fans, they have tents, I think, that you can go to, and they have hospitality suites that you can go and visit. Those are usually, they're new this year, and with COVID, I haven't been able to get down there. I've been covering as press, so I haven't gone. But I've heard good things. A lot of times, visiting fan bases go to a bar that's a 5-minute walk from BC called Cityside. It's a good bar. It's a good sports bar. Get good drinks, good food. That's usually where the away teams their fan bases congregate before a game, and then they head on over. And you can get beer at Alumni Stadium too. So
okay, well, good to know. Thanks for that. And yeah, maybe Mizzou fans, hopefully I'll see you at Cityside after the game. How about we plan on that? But one thing you noted, AJ, you're confident in the Eagles coaching staff. One thing I noticed just watching that Temple game last week, just really solid fundamental tackling by Boston College, especially early in the season. I was really impressed by that. Also noticed that your defensive coordinator, born in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, seemed like an interesting story there. Not exactly a hotbed of American football. What should we expect from the Boston College defense this Saturday?
Yeah, absolutely. The defense, it's interesting you watched the Temple game, because what you saw there was after 2 weeks of lots of gnashing of teeth about how poorly the defense looked. They shut out Colgate, but there was a couple plays where against an FCS squad, you don't want to see what you saw, like some breakdowns of defense, things like that. And then against UMass, BC made 11 penalties and let UMass back into a game that BC should have won by about 40. I think the spread was 45. And they let them back into that game. So they were really sloppy. And then it came together against Temple. Like all the issues that people had seen, whether it was tackling, whether it was breakdowns in coverage, the pressure on the quarterback, all of that kind of came together and the defense played much better. And I think that is what we expected with Jeff Hafley, because Hafley, he was the head coach of Ohio State before he came to, not head coach, defensive coordinator at Ohio State, and brought that defense to the level that Ryan Day's team, was in the national the playoffs, they lost to Clemson. And one of the best defenses in the country with Chase Young and some of those cornerbacks that they had. That being said, you have Tem Lokabu as the defensive coordinator. He came from the Cincinnati Bengals. He was a linebackers coach there before. He played football at Colgate. There was a connection with the team that they played earlier this year. He is interesting, and it's really funny because he's got the Democratic Republic of Congo. They just recruited a kid who I talked to on Locked On Boston College, who chose Boston College because he also has Democratic Republic of Congo background, just like Tem, and the two of them connected on that, and he ended up committing to BC or Virginia Tech because of it. He's an up and comer. I think BC, there's some concerns up front. Their defensive front four have their moment. They looked really good against Temple, but I want to see what they can do against a better offensive line and a better school, because at times last year they just got gobbled up, and they're young, and there's a lot of different moving parts there that could cause some concern. So it'll be interesting to see how they do against Mizzou.
Now, if you know this podcast, you know I'm a fan of Built Bar. Built Bar is a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. And right now, they have the limited time flavor, the cookie dough chunk. You have to check it out. It's 100% covered in chocolate, and it is delicious. Head on over to BuiltBar.com, and you can try out some of their 9 other delicious flavors, including coconut almond, cherry raspberry, and even if you don't know which one you like, you can get the mix box where you get 2 of each of the 9 original flavors. Most of the flavors have 17 grams of protein, 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar, and only 4 grams net carbs. Check them out by going to BuiltBar.com and use promo code LOCK15, and you'll get 15% off your first order. Again, use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at BuiltBar.com. Once you have your Built Bar, head on over to Prize Picks. Prize Picks is a leader in college sports daily fantasy. They offer more college football props than anyone in the world and offers all the star players of the Power 5 as well as major players you may never have even heard of. Prize Picks offers any prop you can think of, from yardage to touchdown and even interceptions thrown. And all of you need to know that your deposit, and use our promo codes, and you'll get a 100% deposit match up to $100. You pick 2 to 5 players, and over and under on their projections, you can win up to 10 times on any entry, and it's just you versus the projected numbers. Prize Picks allows mixed sport entries. You can take the over on LeBron, mixed with the under on Tom Brady, in the same entry. Use the same winning app on the App Store or Google Play. Prize Picks is safe and easy for withdrawals. Don't hesitate. Check out prizepicks.com or go to your sports app and download the app today. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy.
Wow. You never know. A Congo to Boston pipeline could have opened up. You never know. How about that? Well, AJ, I got to say, one thing I thought coming into this season, I really figured that Boston College was probably going to be favored in this football game. But here we are. Our friends at BetOnline.ag, at least at last check for me, have the Tigers favored by 2.5. Do you think this is all to do with the quarterback? Are you surprised by this? And finally, just how are you feeling? What's your pick? You think Boston College is winning this thing?
So I definitely think it's the quarterback. I think the difference between Grosel and Djokovic was a bit of a drop off. So I think the betting people go through that. I mean, I have Boston College winning. That's kind of my thing, is I pick BC to win every game. Just even when they play Clemson, they're going to beat Clemson. So that's my pick. Do I think they'll win? This is probably as 50-50 of a game as it's going to get. So I think it's going to be a really exciting and close game. Look to see if BC's offense gets it going. If they struggle, Mizzou can come out and score some points early, could get them in trouble, because I don't know how Grosel will look trying to play from behind. But if he comes out, it's a home game. I think it's Parents Weekend this weekend, so it's a big weekend on Boston College campus. The fans are going to be pumped. maybe if they get that energy going and get that lead started, then they can kind of get into a rhythm. I mean, at this point, it's a 50-50. It's a home game, so I give it a little edge to BC in this one.
Well, that is one thing you mentioned, playing from behind. I think even though Missouri obviously lost to Kentucky, they got down 14-0 and did show the ability to come back, even got down 28-14 later, still showed the ability to come back offensively. Connor Bazalik, the Missouri quarterback, maybe showed more playmaking ability outside the pocket than he had shown in his career so far. I found that all very encouraging. But like you said, the Boston College defense seemed to come together in week 3. I still think we're obviously still waiting for that to happen at Missouri. I like the defensive secondary for the Tigers. Got a lot of good players back there, including Jalen Carley's, the free safety. But yeah, the front seven still leaves a lot to be desired with pass rushing, and especially in the run game. So yeah, I don't blame you for picking the Eagles whatsoever, but you know what? As the Mizzou honk that I am, I'm going to pull a Tiger John Cleek. That's a reference for all of you here in Columbia. And I'll take the Tigers to win, say, 28-24. But like you say, AJ, I do think it's a big deal on who gets up in this game early. And just one final thing, what kind of crowd are you expecting for this game? I really have no idea what to expect from a BC crowd.
So it's going to be – it's parents' weekend, so that means all the kids are going to be bringing their parents to the game. So that means – usually parents' weekend is usually against an FCS squad. So I always say they're late arriving, early leaving. But against a team like Mizzou, I think they'll probably push their dinner plans off a little bit. But I think you're probably looking at a crowd of probably around 37 to 40,000. BC Alumni Stadium holds about 44,000. So probably not a sellout unless Mizzou really packs it in. And I think BC fans, I see it all the time on Twitter. Fans don't remember that BC about 15 years ago. I know it's 15 years, but they were good at one point, but they've struggled for a long time. Under Steve Adazio, Frank Spaziani, they really kind of created this program. The fan base is waiting for it to come back. And Jeff Hafley looks like he's going to be the guy to bring him there, but I think some of those fans are still skeptical until they see it happen. So I don't think they'll sell out, but I think it'll be a pretty packed crowd.
No, it's interesting. I think a lot of Missouri fans probably feel the same way about Eli Drinkwitz that they do about Coach Hafley out there in Boston. I think a lot of faith in Drinkwitz right now, and yet there's still some, the bandwagon fans, the casuals, if you will. We'll see if they come back. So far, a little bit slow, but you know what? Maybe we pull one out in Boston, get a little lucky, win another game against Tennessee, get a huge crowd for Texas A&M. Who the heck knows? But AJ, do you have anything else for me that you'd like to ask? I feel like I've dominated the time here a little bit.
Before I do that, just a reminder to fans too. We were talking about tailgating on campus. This again is not to be political at all. I'm just telling you what it is on campus. You have to be vaccinated and show a card to get into the stadium, or you have to have a negative test. I think it's 72 hours beforehand. So make sure you have all that.
Right. Good reminder. Yeah.
Give yourself time to get in too, because the lines for those things, like you get wristbands if you have the vaccination thing, they'll check it out. You can get in quickly if you get there early and just get that piece taken care of, and then you can just go right in. Just get that piece in case you didn't know about that. That's one little thing for Boston College. So for you, I want to know about Connor Bazlik, the quarterback. Tell me a little bit about what makes him dangerous. I mean, he's thrown for almost 300 yards a game. I want to know, what makes him, a good quarterback, because he's not a name when you think SEC quarterbacks this year. He's not one that gets the praise of, Bryce Jones or, not Bryce Jones, the quarterback of Alabama.
Yeah, Bryce Young. Yeah, I got you.
Bryce Young or
sure.
JT Daniels, things like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, the thing about Bazalik, if you are an SEC fan, you definitely know the name, but he's just a quiet, unassuming kid that may be one of his best attributes, is that he just seems cool, calm, and collected under any circumstances. Again, regardless if they're winning the game or they were trailing the game, like they did a couple times by 2 possessions against Kentucky. And yet they had the ball at the end of the game, with a chance to actually tie. And I like that Kentucky team, by the way, even though Missouri lost. So anyway, the thing about Bazlik to me, again, he's cool. I just think he's a really good decision maker. He doesn't have a crazy great arm like maybe Drew Lock did, a recent former Missouri quarterback with the Denver Broncos now, but he's got a strong enough arm. And actually, I think some of those deep shots that they've just missed on connecting with at times the first couple games of the season, I think they're right there on some of those. Now, I will say in the second quarter, Locke took a hit that was a bit concerning to me. It seemed like he was a little bit different of a player after that in the Southeast Missouri game. So hopefully this week he'll have time to heal up and he'll be relatively close to 100% for the Boston College game. But again, Bazlik, just a good decision maker, just a solid player overall. Not like a crazy rusher, but he can rush well enough at least to be a threat anyway.
And, the other piece that came out today during, press conferences when we're talking to BC was the height of Missouri's wide receivers. Like you got guys that are 6'2", 6'5". Talk a little bit about their wideouts. Like, you got Bazlik back there. How are these wide receivers? What makes them so dangerous?
Well, I think your lead guy there has got to be Kiki Chisholm. He has the most experience among the wideouts, but a lot of that experience was actually at the lower level. His first year with Missouri was last season. So again, if he has the most experience, you can tell this is a fairly inexperienced group. But Chisholm is the big body in that group. He's sort of probably the most reliable target for Bazlik, and among at least the wide receivers, probably your best red zone target. But then you've got a couple young guys, a true freshman, Dominic Lovett. He's a speed burner on the outside. Then you've got Mookie Cooper, who's a transfer from Ohio State, another speed burner, a guy who's getting back up to speed a little bit, struggled with a little bit of some sort of foot injury in fall camp, but it seems like he's getting back up to speed, getting a lot of jet sweeps. He and Dominic Lovett, by the way, both get a lot of jet sweeps. So if you've seen sort of the Sean McVay, Andy Reid sort of modern offense that has a lot of guys in motion, a lot of play action, a lot of jet sweep, expect to see that. But the thing with Lovett and Cooper is, for as explosive as they are, they're really inexperienced. So we do have to sort of wait and see what we get from them.
And my last question for you, what do you might have already alluded to this earlier in the episode. What do you think of Mizzou's biggest weak point? What is the weakest part? Is it the run defense?
I mean, I think you'd have to say it is by now. It's probably just the front seven in general, I would say, because I wouldn't say that the pass rush has been anything to write home about either. But yeah, clearly the run defense statistically certainly is the biggest problem. But I will admit, if Missouri was truly a sieve in the passing game, that would be even more worrisome to me, considering how modern football is played. But again, got to get some pass rush at a certain point, or else that promising secondary that Missouri has isn't going to hold up all season.
Make sure to check out Locked On Mizzou wherever you get your podcast. This is AJ Black. Thank you all for listening. On tomorrow's show, we're going to have CJ Klingscales on. He's going to talk about his path to Boston College. We'll get even more into the Mizzou game. Make sure you check out Locked On Boston College wherever you get your podcasts. And if you have not already, hit the subscribe button. And make sure to follow us on YouTube as well. This is AJ Black. Thank you all for listening. Stay well, everyone.